be live now. Just checking the YouTube to make sure it all kind of starts up good. But we are into episode 9. And as you guys can tell from the thumbnail, the community post I did last night, I was not a huge fan of this episode. I have my reasons, which we'll talk about in this episode. A lot of them kind of stem from one character that I've talked about last week and even in last week's stream. But before we get into all of that, what did you guys think of the episode? So let me know, do you guys think it was good, bad, middle ground? What did you guys think and why? And then also, I want to talk about something in the chat that was before I had started streaming that I want to just talk about for a second. When I say this was the worst episode, or what I think this could be the worst episode of the season, that is not saying this is a bad TV. The worst episode of House of the Dragon is still better than something like Rings of Power. Okay? And there are still a lot of positive things in this episode, a lot of moments that are very good. There are, as always, the music is very good in House of the Dragon. The costume design is very good. Aegon II's like coronation, one of the most beautiful shots that we've gotten so far. There is a lot of good in here. And the acting is very good as well. Especially Allison Hightower's actor. She does a very good job acting in this episode. I will say I wasn't a fan of Allison's portrayal, but I will say I think she did a very good job in the role. And another thing I want to talk about. My opinion is not the set in stone, this is what you have to believe. We should all have varying opinions whether or not it shouldn't just be all of us think it's bad or all of it's good. Like, this is a very divisive episode. From what I've seen, from what I've heard from other, whether it be content creators, people in the community that have DM'd me on Instagram or that we've talked back and forth about last night's episode, this seems like a very, you either really like this episode or you really hate this episode, or it's just like in the middle somewhere. And yeah, it's been pretty divisive for my opinion. Hi Casper, how are you? Hi Glossy, welcome. Oh, I liked it, but there was definitely some issues I had with the writing. Perspective people, yes, Ashley, yes. It's the worst, but still good. I think for me, it's tough because I think this episode and episode 3 are pretty much on par for me. I didn't like it. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to have to talk about a certain part of the episode I didn't like before we get into all the scenes, because I don't want to have this video keep repeating what I think is wrong, because it's a recurring theme throughout the entire episode. So I'm going to talk about that at the beginning, and then we're going to kind of work into the episode from there and all that. I didn't like the ending where Rhaenys just left without killing them, but I get it that it didn't happen in the book, so yeah. Yeah, that was quite, and this has been not just like from me not liking this episode. Even people that like think this was a very good episode or like it was a solid episode, they didn't like that ending. It's an ending that I think is very bad for a lot of reasons, and that's just something that I think this show has a recurring theme of. The endings of House of the Dragon are very weird. Episode 3 is the episode where we get Daemon in the Stepstones. I don't actually remember what actually happened in the first half of it. I think that was the hunt, maybe, but yeah. Thank you for the super chat, the advocate. I appreciate it. Also, the super chat thing popped up. Thank God. So, brother, definitely the weakest episode. Lair's foot fetish was unnecessary, and Rhaenys not killing the Greens is a huge plot hole. I agree with you. I think those were very weird things and choices that they decided to do. It felt weird. Like, why is this in here? Right? And then also, Rhaenys not killing the Greens. It really came off to me as something that they were afraid that the dragons weren't in the episode. They weren't in the big episode 9 episode, so they put them in there. And it's something I've talked about a lot throughout the episodes, where the dragons just need to be in there because they're scared to not have the dragons in there. I don't know. The Royal Hunt is the worst episode in my opinion. I think that's episode 3, Ashley. I don't remember, because I remember the reason I hated episode 3 was because of how the Stepstones were treated and Damon's plot hole and stuff. But again, thank you for the super chat advocate. I appreciate it. Didn't like episode 5. What did I have episode 5 rated as? I had it as an 8. So again, it was like middle of the pack for me. Oops, Rhaenys committed a genocide. Yeah. And so died Viserys, the only good guy in the story. Yep. Actually, yeah, all the early episodes are worse than the newer ones, in my opinion. Let me look at my rankings. So, for me, the top ranked episodes for me was episode 2, 4, and 8. I had all 3 of those episodes as a 9 out of 10. I will say episode 8, the ending now, has kind of hurt that episode, in my opinion. Hi, Anime, how are you? So episode 3 was the hunt. Yes. Okay. So yeah, that was, I think, the weakest episode for me. It wasn't necessarily because of the hunt. It was because of more of the Stepstone stuff. The show doesn't feel the same without Viserys, to be honest. He's such a great guy, man. We love Viserys. One of the best performances I've seen in a very long time. Just rewatched the episode and I got my notes. Good thing, Matthew. Good thing. I agree, Glossy, on the Rhaenys characterization. I definitely agree with you on that as well, Hugo. That's exactly what it kind of felt like. So, before we get into the actual episode and we talk about every scene by scene, I need to talk about Allison. She is the one over-looming character that I think has taken me out of the story. I talked about it last week where I didn't like the direction that they took her character in episode 8. And that continues. And this is, I want to, point this out, right? It's okay if you disagree with this opinion. This is just my opinion, the way I'm looking at it, as well as, again, I have a book bias. So the way I interpreted Allison is vastly different than the way they went with her character. And she just as a whole is very different in the book. But Allison, if we look at her characterization, right? Let's look at the first half of the season. So episode 1 through 5 was really, it reminded me a lot of Daenerys, where Daenerys is a character that is kind of being manipulated by a lot of people, is being kind of walked over by people, and it's kind of her coming to age story where she gets confidence, she becomes this character that is in control and stuff like that. She becomes a Khaleesi. Allison, it feels like that as well. Allison is a character that her father is kind of manipulating her and stuff like that. And her relationship with Rhaenyra is deteriorating because of that. And also, again, they just have a toxic friendship. Both of them make decisions that are not great, and they're just vastly different people, right? Rhaenyra is the kind of rule breaker, the kind of, how do I put this? More of like the rebellious kind. She's the dragon rider type. And Allison is more of this character that is by the book, by the rules, don't break the rules, all these things. It's because it's what she's been taught, and she's kind of been forced into that position, right? And I did feel sympathy for Allison, right? I think Allison in my opinion, outside of like Viserys, had one of the strongest character arcs from episode 1 to episode 7, because at episode 5, so this is Rhaenyra and Laenar's wedding, for some of the things we didn't like, Kristen Cole notably in that episode, this is the episode where Allison comes into her own, right? This is Allison's, she's got the green dress on. This is the Allison kind of coming to her own. This is the Daenerys walking out of the fire moment for Allison. And this is supposed to signify us that, yeah, Allison's in it for her own. She can't trust Rhaenyra anymore. She has to do what's best for her children, and she's kind of going into the Hightower role, right? And that's kind of what the first 5 episodes are meant to build up to. Episodes 6 and 7, and this is something that I've talked about with House of the Stag. We were talking about this a little bit on Instagram, and Allison, when we come back to her character and we see her, she is someone that is lecturing Aegon that he should be the king and how he should behave and these things like that. And she is slowly, every episode, gaining more power, becoming a better politician, and she's really coming into her own, right? And yes, she does some morally questionable things, right? She, basically is complicit in the Strongs being killed, right? She knows of what happened and she says nothing, right? And it goes along with Allison is actively playing the game, right? And this all kind of comes to a head when we get to episode 8. So episode 8 opens, right? Actually, I don't remember exactly how it opens, but I know. So Rhaenyra and Daemon eventually end up in King's Landing, right? It opens with Rhaenys, now that I remember. But we see Rhaenyra and Daemon coming to King's Landing, and we see what Allison's rule of King's Landing is kind of done, right? There are no black supporters in King's Landing at this point. Like there's like maybe a person here or there, but this is very much the Green City. There's no one here that gives a shit about Rhaenyra and Daemon. There's no one there to greet them, right? And Rhaenyra even mentions that this doesn't feel right. Like, this doesn't feel like her home. And when anybody talks about King's Landing, like Rhaenys talks about it, this is Allison's city now. Like, this is not Viserys. Like, she's basically ruling for Viserys. And even if we look in past episodes, right, any chance of peace could have been solved. If that's the way Allison wanted to go, she could have. But they built up Allison's character to be someone that is kind of prideful, that doesn't want to marry her children to bastards, and that she's a rule follower, right? And I liked that. I thought she had a very strong character arc. And then, so again, you can't put this as, oh, I'm a black supporter, I am, with Rhaenyra, because, again, I do love those, but I have problems with Rhaenyra's character. We'll talk about that probably in next episode, or next, whatever. But Allison just kind of has come into her own, really, is where we're getting to. And then episode 8 has this whole idea where, even in the episode, right, she is actively with Otto, right? She's going along with it, and she's, playing her, she's doing her thing, that she's going to get the Velaryons on her side, right, with Vaemond, and she discounts Rhaenyra's children, not saying they're bastards publicly, but kind of implying it, right? So this is interesting, because even in the episode that Allison reverts and goes to, back to Rhaenyra, and they kind of have a little friendship thing, she's still plotting that there is going to be a war. Like, it's said in this little conversation with Vaemond, this is for the betterment of, the peace of the realm, or, if war was to break out or something. It's heavily implying that they know war is coming. Right? So Allison then has this dinner with the family. And when I first watched this part of the episode, thought this was a facade. That Allison was kind of putting this all on for Viserys, for a show, because she's learned how to be a politician. She has learned from episode 7, where she has this outburst, and sorry, I'm not reading chat, guys. I just want to get this portion of the stream out of the way, because it does heavily impact how I look at this episode. So I will get to chat here in a second. But continuing on, I thought she was putting on a facade, right? It made sense to kind of manipulate, Rhaenyra, or just, a show for Viserys to make him feel good. And we know that that's not true, because by the end of the episode, which is, again, it's kind of a plot hole for actually this episode. Matthew brought this up, but Allison basically says to Rhaenyra, why don't you come back and visit more and stuff like that. Now, Allison would never say that if she wants King's Landing to be her own. She wants Rhaenyra far away, because, as you see, Rhaenyra is not in King's Landing, which allows Allison to kind of take over and have more of the green control. And you can't say this was just Otto, because Otto, he wasn't even in King's Landing for a good portion, right? He gets removed his hand. Right? Otto does not come back as Hand of the King until episode 8, correct? So all of this kind of leads to this. And why is Allison reverting? I don't know what clicked in her to revert to back to Rhaenyra. You could say, okay, well, it's a really old friend. Maybe that's why. She has been training her children to basically hate Rhaenyra's children. They are being trained to fight each other. What we've gotten no indication through the last, like, after the time skip from episode 5 into 6, we've gotten no indication that Allison feels any type of any way towards Rhaenyra. So this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? And they could have just not done this, right? They could have just not done it, right? But then we have what I think was very detrimental to this episode specifically, is Viserys then, while Allison is kind of, I guess, giving him his medicine or whatever, Viserys, in a very under the influence state, also while he's close to dying, mutters something about Aegon and the prince that was promised. And she comes to a very quick conclusion that this means Aegon, like her Aegon, which, again, if you think about it, at this point, Rhaenyra has a child named Aegon. There's a ton of Aegons. It seems like a very quick turn where Allison's like, yeah, he definitely meant that. It's very much meant to be something that's like she's hearing what she wants to hear. And that's fine and good, but you just had her revert back to, hey, Rhaenyra should be the queen, and then we're all good again. She went back on that very quickly. So that leads to episode 9 and the way they handled her character in this episode. Her character is so back and forth at times. At times, she's the cunning Allison, the Allison they were building up through the first 7 episodes, actually. The first 7 episodes and half of episode 8. Where she's with, for instance, she's with Larys Strong, and she gets rid of people that are spying on her. She takes more power and takes more control over King's Landing. It's a very, very morally sketchy thing to do. It's something that it's not a good look. Like, she's giving the go and actively telling him to kill people. Not a good look. But for the game and her as a politician, makes a lot of sense. And that is the Allison I wanted them to go with, because it's someone that I can understand Allison as a person in that way. And it makes sense for her to do these things. Just looking at her situation, wanting to protect her children, which, I don't know, it seems like she hates all of her children except Helena, but I don't know. But then we have this idea where, wow, we actually have 32 consecutive viewers. Thank you guys for all tuning in. Thank you for updating me, Young Wolf, because I don't look at viewer count or anything while I'm streaming. But we're looking at that whole idea, and we come to the Green Council, right? Allison makes a lot of sense here, where she's visually upset, a little bit emotionally scarred, because we know that she didn't like Viserys as maybe a romantic partner, but we know she cared about him to some degree. She's crying about him. I thought that was very good. That's another thing I want to talk about as a positive. That's very good, because it's something we don't see really in the book, is that Allison is upset about Viserys' death, and I really liked that they did that. So when it comes to the Green Council, I understand why she emotionally would be kind of not in a good place. But at the same time, she finds out that everybody has been plotting to put Aegon on the throne already, this should not be a surprise. Episode 5 and 7 was literally building the exact plot that we're getting to now, right? Where Alicent has been openly grooming Aegon to be the ruler, even though he's terrible at it. It's so weird to me, because they flip-flop her character so much, right? Where in one situation, we're supposed to feel bad for Allison. We're supposed to relate to Allison. We're supposed to feel bad for her. And the next, or she's, even if we go back to that side, it's more morally gray. She's kind of, you know, trying to be more of a protagonist. They're trying to level out the structure. By the way, Advocate, I know I've seen your message twice just because I'm looking at it. Allison in the books is petty. She's much more layered here in the show. I would say they give her a lot more to do because we know what Allison does. Like, if you look at Allison through the first 7 episodes, in my opinion, you are definitely spot on there. I think Allison is a much better character in the show through that first 7, but I don't like where they started flip-flopping her character. She is more layered, though. I will agree in that regard. In that. And so we see all these ideas, and that's something that I think is going to be a reoccurring idea that I'm going to have in this episode. And it's one of the reasons I really didn't like this episode, because now we have that Allison is apparently doesn't want Aegon to sit the throne, or doesn't want to, you know, hurt Rhaenyra or something like that. It creates this Otto Hightower versus Allison, and it's like the main theme of the episode, and I just don't buy into that plot point. It's the main reason I don't like the episode, and that's why I'm saying, if you like the episode, I'm glad, right? That's just not a plot point because of the way I see Allison as a character, right? The way, and this is the problem, is as a book reader, I have a certain way I see Allison as a character, and I look at the way they had started to build her character that was very similar, but just better in the show, and they kind of abandoned it. And the other problem that we're going to talk about when we get to the Green Council is that because they introduced this whole idea that, oh, Viserys named Aegon the heir on his deathbed, they completely ignored all of the other reasons of why they give Aegon being the king. We do not talk about the Great Council at the Green Council. That was a rough statement, but we don't talk about how, you know, there has been a precedent before with Viserys that Viserys came before Rhaenys. That's not used as evidence to cite. They're not really talking about at all the major theme that has been built up for nearly the entire season of, should a woman rule over a man? That is the biggest theme during this time period in Fire and Blood, and is something that divides the country. It's nowhere to be found in this episode. It just, I don't know, it's interesting. So that is the whole Allison problem that I wanted to address for me, because her character does not work for me. So a lot of the episode doesn't work for me, and that is the big thing. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about Allison. I know I haven't been reading comments. I'm going to try to get back into that. Then we're going to start the actual going through all the scenes. But that's something I needed to talk about early on in the episode, because it is the stream, because it is the big thing that holds me back from liking this episode. All right, let's go all the way back, because I missed a ton of comments. Also, it would have been awesome to have seen Sunfire, as Citro says. How are you, Citro? Why was Allison in her own room when she found out Viserys was dead? I thought he died in front of her in the last episode. I don't think she was present. Like, I think she kind of like walks out of the room more or less, and then he dies. What the fuck was that Lord Beesbury's death? No throat slit, no getting thrown out the window. No, yeah, I was very disappointed with how they did that. I thought Lord Beesbury's speech was really good. I thought it was really good, but he basically gets his head pushed onto the table and he dies. I was really hoping they were going to go with the thrown out of the window thing, but it wasn't realistic. It was just an odd scene. Even my friend, who was a very casual viewer, thought that was very weird the way they handled his death. But I don't know. According to Easebest, Rhaenys felt no responsibility to stop the Greens or solve the realm's problems because the realm rejected her twice. Flying away on Meleys was her way of saying "fuck you all." Yeah, but so this is my problem with the whole end scene. We're gonna get there, but I'll briefly talk about it here for a second. let's look at Rhaenys as a character, right? She's just been imprisoned by the Greens, basically, forced against her will to be a prisoner, basically. And also, we know that she has some connection to Rhaenyra, that she has some support for Rhaenyra because she goes right back to Rhaenyra in the next episode in the trailer. And also, any of her remaining family, so her granddaughters, with Daemon and Laena's kids, are going to be at risk of a war. Her husband, who maybe she doesn't really care about as much anymore, is at risk. She, I guess, doesn't care about the innocent because she kills a bunch of innocent people. So I don't really buy that. I don't buy that Rhaenys, she knows she's going to get dragged into a war. They are not going to let a dragon rider just be fine and just not mention. So I really was not a fan of that whole interaction, even with that logic. He died right after Allison left the room. That is what I thought. The question is, where did Rhaenys get the armor? I don't know. The only thing I did like with the Allison flip is saying it was Viserys' wish to kill his own daughter, and they should try to, even though they know it's futile. Yeah, that's fair. Viserys would not wanted his daughter to die, so that is a good point. Oh yeah, so Dylan mentions the twins, so of the Kingsguard, basically. They were very good in this episode. I liked that they showed how they're very different and how that's going to foreshadow events to come. I hope the show remembers that Allison and Rhaenyra become awful, absolute awful human. Yes. I am someone that really loves Rhaenyra. I love her character, and one of the reasons I love her character is because of her descent. So, yeah, I hope they remember that. And that's what, so I've talked about Allison and how they've kind of stopped going down her darker, badass, woman route. Rhaenyra has been the opposite. They've made her very good. She's the easy protagonist, when in reality, she should be much darker by this point. She should be someone that's much more cruel, much more vengeful. She should have more going on in her arc. And she just doesn't, which is, yeah. I mean, there's good and bad to both sides. I think Rhaenyra and Allison have both been not handled to their fullest. The ending made sense because the idea was finding a compromise between both parties. If she had attacked and someone had survived, there would have been no turning back. Yeah, but David, I think the whole point here is, how is anyone going to survive? I mean, the best we can think of here, David, is that I think this is best case scenario. So best case scenario is we know Daeron, so this is the fourth child of Allison and Viserys, is alive. So let's say that the Hightowers, right? Because remember, Otto Hightower is not in control of the Hightower family. They back and say Daeron is now the king. Okay. Let's think about this. Rhaenys is on a dragon. She's going to kill them all, right? There's no way they escape. There's no way in hell anybody escapes if she has a dragon right in front of them. So this means Allison's dead, Aegon's dead, Aemon's dead, Lena's dead, Otto's dead, whoever else up there is dead. You've now eliminated quite literally every dragon rider for the Greens except for Daeron. And also, at this point, King's Landing is open to be taken by Rhaenyra, which is one of the big problems that happens with with the dance, is that because the Greens control King's Landing, gives them a huge advantage. When you look at the dynamic of how people would look at both sides, one's on the Iron Throne, one's kind of being looked at as a usurper, basically. It's exactly why it was so important to get Joffrey off the throne if you're someone like Stannis, right? So that, to me, is an interesting idea, David, but I don't really see how that would have helped. And I agree, Billy Bob. I agree. Also, when you really look at Rhaenys' characterization later on in the story, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Also, hi, Young Wolf. How are you? I also agree, Matthew, with you talking about how they already started the war by Aegon's coronation. You know that Rhaenyra is not going to back down. Curious about Christian Cole. Lots of book fans seem to speak of him in a positive way. He is my most hated character in the show. So this depends, Gryffindor, which side of the aisle you are on. If you are on the green side, yes, he is much more in a positive light. If you're on the black side, like me, I still hate Christian. I can't say his name. Christian Cole. But yeah, no, I think in the books he's nowhere near as bad as he is in the show. Like he just comes off as kind of a Allison's little toy, and that he's just kind of psychotic at times and just kind of an asshole. I mean, he kind of comes off as that in the book, but he is just really obnoxious and terrible in the show, in my opinion. I didn't hate this episode, but it was definitely the worst of the show. Also, the Gold Cloaks are still loyal to Damon. That is correct. So I will say, Billy Bob, I agree with you. I didn't hate the episode. Like, this is not a Rings of Power. Like, I hate the whole show. I hate everything. Screw this show. No, there were a lot of elements of this episode I liked, but just the overall story didn't work for me. I don't know, Citro, on how she busted out of the dragon pit. I really don't know. And also, it begs the question is that if she got out of the dragon pit, is there holes for all the dragons to now get out of very easily? I don't know. That is also correct, Billy Bob, on getting the dragon out. Yes, peasants, doesn't matter. Joffrey had a ton of newborn killed and no one did anything. That's fair. Also, Rhaenys still believes Rhaenyra and Daemon had her son murdered. Why would she then turn around and solve their problems? I mean, it's not only solving their problems, but solving her problems. It's like, you rub my back, I rub your back type situation, right? Because again, Rhaenys going to Rhaenyra and Daemon is basically, okay, you're with the Blacks now, is what that says. And you know that Corlys is going to be on the Black side, so you know you're going to be involved in the war. So why take the risk of putting yourself in danger? Not only like your other. I've talked about this already, but I kind of disagree with that, Ashley. One of the few times we disagree, but we can respectfully disagree. Yes, that was another thing. There were so many things that didn't make sense for me, where it was like we left out book things like the Kingmaker scene with Kristen Cole and Aegon for things like, hey, let's look around for Aegon for half an episode. It was just like, whatever. Allison was reverted again. She is more gray now. I don't even know what to say on Allison. She just flip-flops too much. Now Kristen has nothing to do for the entire show but die. Yeah. Allison is inconsistent. Even though she doesn't want to betray Viserys or Rhaenyra, she must do it because that's what she does in the book. So she's made to act out of character against her feelings. Fair enough. Yeah, Ashley, the only reason she's on Rhaenyra's side is, yeah. But this is exactly why she would kill them, because the problem here is, if you think about it, right, Baela and Rhaenys are set to marry Rhaenyra's children, correct? Puts them in direct danger. And I don't think that Rhaenys would ever put Baela and Rhaenys in danger to that level. I think the writing for Kristen's character, yes, much better. The inconsistency with Allison ruined the episode for me. I agree. I'm right there with you, Ashley. Right there with you. I agree, Glossy. Agreed, Matthew. Yeah, we're on the same page, Matthew. We just, I'm just reading your comments a little later. This is another question. Why did they let the Lord Commander Westerling just leave the council? Is he in the White Sword Tower, or did he leave the city like Barristan? I would assume that he didn't leave the city because, again, and when we see people try to leave the city, Larys rats them out. Because this is something my casual friend also asked me, who doesn't have any book knowledge or anything. Why would they let the Lord Commander leave with all this information? The only thing I can guess is that they were not confident that Kristen Cole could beat him in a fight, or that they didn't want to kill anybody else, I guess. Give me a second, guys. Also, guys, hold on. I actually get OBS here. I have the Santa shirt on, but it does not fit well. Hold on. I have the Santa shirt. I didn't know it was a unisex shirt, so it does not fit well. Like this right here, the neck, it don't fit. It just does not fit. So I don't know how much I'm gonna use do this shirt on streams, but I will try my best because it's uncomfortable. Also, the arm length is just weird, so you know. I did not know it was a what would you say? It was a unisex shirt until I bought it, or until it arrived, I guess. Agreed, Hugo. I'm wondering if they're planning to keep Harold Westering around and be the Lord Commander of Rhaenyra's Queensguard because they have an established actor for the role. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think in episode 8, she decided Rhaenyra should be queen when she... So this is my counter against that, Jesse, is that the way the scene is framed, so again, this is my interpretation. You could be completely right on that. My interpretation is, if you look at the way Allison handles the situation, it's like this has happened before. And at no point before then has she reverted. So that is kind of how I look at that. And she knows what Aegon is, but yet she's been continuously saying he should be king. Where's this mushroom I keep hearing about? I don't know, man. He's somewhere. Speaking of Aegon, he's already a drunk, immature sex addict that didn't want the throne, and they need to make him a full-on rapist, and then even more of a monster with the child fight stuff. Yeah, Aegon, that's another weird thing of this episode. They tried to make Aegon very sympathetic, but I'm sitting here like, this dude is literally the scum of the earth. Like, I like that we know why, or like what, it's like Joffrey. It's like we know kind of why he became what he became, but he's not sympathetic to me. I like the nice and gentle Allison more, but she doesn't work as a character this way. The show should just made her ambitious and treacherous like in the book, rather than going back and forth. I mean, I agree. I think it's fine to start her as very nice and gentle, but that's the whole point of this time period, is that it breaks people. It brings out the worst in people. She should be going to that place now. We shouldn't be having this conflict this late in season 1. And the same goes with Rhaenyra as well. Same goes with Rhaenyra. It's not like I'm just saying one of them, both of them. Is Matthew still a usurper? Of course. If only Aemond had found Aegon alone, he would have let him run away. Yep. Aemond would be a far better king, by the way, I will say, than Aegon would. Allison and Viserys did a horrible job. Well, to be fair, I don't think Viserys even tried raising them. I think it was just Allison. I think they're trying to show that Allison does want her way, but isn't evil at her core. But the way they're doing it seems like she's flip-flopping on. Yeah, that's kind of how they're trying to do it. I just don't think it works for me, SpongeBob. Yeah, Viserys wasn't even a father. He was a lot like Robert Baratheon in that way. Allison in the books is petty. Yeah, I read that already. Why is this episode called The Green Council, and the Green Council is only one short scene? I think it's a good title. I just think they should have done more with the Green Council. It was very lackluster to me. I can't type tonight. I tested positive for COVID this morning, and I went to blame episode 9 for it because I went to bed annoyed at all the insane character change-ups. And well, Citro, I hope you feel better. Get a lot of rest. And yeah. Episode dragged a bit, but I thought it was pretty good. I'd love to see that water. God, it just went down so far. I don't know where I'm at now. Hold on. Hold on. Gotta figure out where I left off on reading comments. Oh, well, I told you all the show is season. I would not go that far, shot yet. They're definitely giving me some signs that remind me of the later seasons. I would not put it there yet. I still think it's much better than probably every season after season 4, but it mirrors how Tyrion and especially Cersei try to work around and against Tywin. Makes sense. Maybe it plays differently in a book if Allison was just petty. I would just hate her like I do Kristen Cole. I really like Allison possibly because of the changes. See, I personally, again, I don't like Allison because, again, I'm a Rhaenyra supporter, right? But I still understand Allison's character in the book, and I think she's a very intriguing character. I don't hate Allison because she's a bad character. She's written badly. She is a very, very morally complex character who does get kind of slighted, or she feels slighted from Rhaenyra, and that kind of turns her. But I think she's still very well written in Fire and Blood. Other YouTubers must be getting paid to ignore the obvious. I don't know about that shot. I just come on here and I give my honest opinion on it. I don't want to ever come on here and fake how I feel about an episode because that's what everybody else is doing, but I don't know. I don't really watch a ton of other A Song of Ice and Fire YouTubers when it comes to reviewing House of the Dragon specifically. Season's been pretty good. Yeah, I agree, Billy Bob. I think the season's been pretty good so far. Like, even this episode I have is still like a high 6, low 7. Beesbury's death was also kind of underwhelming. Yeah, so talked about this a little bit already, but yeah, Beesbury's death was not great in the episode, in my opinion. I really wanted to see that as well. Water. So when I kept alluding to there are scenes I wanted to see how they would do in the show early on, this was one. I wanted to see how they were going to kill Beesbury, and I was not a fan. Crispin is a joke at this point. Crispin is just funny. Consequences is coming for sure. I would hope so, Water. I would hope so. First season is build up. Yeah, it is build up, but there should be some major payoffs that have consequences in the next episode. So, and again, it's too early to be saying, characters aren't facing consequences. Like, to a degree, you're right about like characters like Kristen Cole, right? Kristen Cole hasn't really faced any consequences for murdering people in the past, but it's too early to say like characters like Allison and Rhaenys, they don't have any of that. I kind of agree with your sentiment, Water. Didn't Kristen put the crown on the kid? Yes. My biggest pet peeves with this episode is barely now that they're trying to do something with the Kingsguard members like the twins and Harold Westerling. I'm not sure what you're trying to say in there, SpongeBob. I'm looking at yeah, so what I was talking about is there is a part where Kristen Cole basically is the one that convinces Aegon to become king because Aegon doesn't want to be king, similar to the show. So Paxton, I agree, but I disagree. Because there was ways that this episode shouldn't have been a setup episode. And there's a lot of ways you could have done this episode much better. This should have been the best episode of the series so far. The way that I always pictured this is the climax to the start of the Dance of the Dragons, in my opinion. And there's a kind of a next episode that is also tied into that. But the Green Council is that big moment. It's that moment that sparks it. Like, if we think about season 1, right, of Game of Thrones, the big moment is Ned's death. This is like, it's not, I guess, to that degree, but it is supposed to be that moment that kickstarts the entire, like, war, the entire everything. Viserys dying is kind of the Ned Stark dying type thing. The Green Council was such a letdown. Should have been a longer scene with lots of dialogue about succession with lots of Otto, Allison, Tylan, Beesbury, and Kristen Cole arguing. Yes. And this is something that I disliked, is that they should have been saying these arguments like they were trying to convince not only themselves, but someone like Beesbury that this is the right way to go. Giving up saying all the arguments like I talked about a little bit earlier on, and also, going through it all and making plans. We very, very briefly get the idea that The treasury is being moved everywhere. It's being split up, which is a very important plot point for later. That is just kind of briefly mentioned. We have that, oh, we should be making alliances. All this kind of gets shut down by Allison, and that's the most intriguing part of the Green Council, is that the Greens and the Blacks, their advantage, and again, this should have been talked about in the episode as well, because as a casual viewer, you're really not led to believe what are the advantages of both sides. So from the Green side of it, it's you have the death of a Cersei. You are the only people that know of that. You can start making alliances, scheming earlier. You have a head start, right? You have Vhagar. That's an advantage. Even though the Blacks have more dragons and that's their advantage, you have Vhagar. It's a major advantage. You control the Iron Throne. It is a big thing for publicity, where it makes them look like, okay, Aegon is the legit heir. He's the one on the throne. Public opinion's another thing that you're able to use for the Greens very early on because of knowing that already, that Viserys is dead. It puts the Blacks on the back foot. And because they're put on the back foot, something will happen in next episode that I'm not going to straight up say, that kind of results because of the Blacks being, a little farther behind. And the Blacks, their big advantages are they have military might, or not military might, they have more military strategy with Corlys and Daemon. They didn't really develop that much of that in the show, but that is one of their things. They have the dragons. They have a superior navy. Now, the other problem is the Crown has the treasury. They have more of the gold. So those are kind of the things that I wanted to see them talk about in the Green Council, because these are very important, and it sets the stage for the Dance of the Dragons. And maybe they'll talk about that a bit more. Maybe with the Black Council, we'll get a bit more of that. But yeah, I think the Green Council was very much a letdown. I don't mind Allison. I don't think the producers want another Cersei. They're trying to do something different with Allison. I get that, but it's hard to do that when the main reference for Allison and also Rhaenyra, they're both very much like Cersei to a degree, that you're trying to undo what the overall kind of themes were of the characters, which I guess it's fine. I just don't like the way that they executed that. I also agree with you, Matthew, that there were no guards in the Dragon Pit. Doesn't really make any sense. Daeron will be in the next scene. That was confirmed by George. I did a video today recording about his not a blog post, but he will be in next season. Yes, but the Black Council will be considered kinslayers. They may turn off several lords, i.e. the Starks. Okay, I'm assuming you're talking about if Rhaenys just kills them all. It doesn't matter. At this point, there's one dragon rider. Rhaenyra is going to win the throne regardless. At that point. Hi, Skill, how are you? I'm a little behind chat, so sorry for, responding really late. Yeah, I kind of agree with Paxton. I mean, they could have tried to prop up Daeron as the king, but I don't think it would have gone well. Agreed shot. I kind of hate Rhaenyra in the show. I don't blame you. She really is not the same character from the book, but I still like her character, and she's my favorite character. I just kind of have to, because she's my favorite Targaryen, or one of them in the entire lore. So David, I get what you're saying, but I think you're heavily undervaluing the dragons. Like, you have to think, right? The Targaryens of the black side already had way more dragons than the green side at the beginning of the war. And the only thing that equalized it was they had Vhagar. They have nobody left outside of Daeron, who has a younger dragon, to go against all of the dragons. Like, it would not have been close. And these armies, they're cool and all, but we've seen what effective use of dragons does with Aegon, with how Jaehaerys rules the realm with the dragons, even with Maegor. it doesn't really matter if all these other kingdoms like go into rebellion or something. It doesn't matter. Was me or is there a clear insinuation that Aegon is gay or at least sleeps with men? I don't remember that in the books. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Ashley, on that one. Killing a ton of peasants doesn't help the blacks, Grease. You want to come later on that support. Supports the point. Treating peasants like they ain't shit is bad. No, I know that's bad, right? And I think the plot point was stupid in general, right? But if Rhaenys is willing to kill a ton of peasants, why not just kill the royal family? Like, you're already making a bad decision to kill a bunch of innocents. Might as well kill the royal family anyway. You're already that far in deep, so I don't know. I think it's nicely setting up how the peasants will hate the... Well, Glossy, they are going to hate the dragons for a lot of reasons. I also didn't see any gay stuff from Aegon, but maybe I wasn't paying attention, or maybe it was one of the times where I was looking down while I was typing for notes. Skill, Allison's character feels off after episode 6. She just feels like they changed the character but kept the same name. I kind of agree with you on that. I would say I thought she was pretty much the same character until after, like, a little bit into episode 8. Yeah, and this is another thing I really dislike, Citro, is the glorifying of death. It leaves a very bad taste in my mouth, and it's something House of the Stag that I've talked about did a video today on his review of the episode, and he did this perfectly. So I'm going to give you guys an example from his video. It is very much feels like when Arya kills the entire Frey family. It's very much glorifying death. And it's even worse in this episode because at least in that we had, okay, the Freys murdered the Starks, the Red Wedding, you know, but all of them, again, weren't probably complicit in it. But we have that whole idea, but this one's just killing common people, like people that were basically forced to watch this, you know, coronation. Like they were basically shoved in there. It's not a good look to me. The Hightowers aren't loved outside of Old Town. Yeah, Rhaenyra is not like hated at this, even at this point, right? She is still looked at as being the darling of the realm, even though at this point she isn't. She's not as good looking. She is, you know, kind of gotten fat. She's kind of gotten. She is still looked at, and a lot of people still adore her and remember their oaths. And that's another thing that they don't bring up is that another thing they're like, oh well, everybody swore oaths to Rhaenyra, and then, you know, Lord Lannister is basically like, I didn't. And that's another thing you can use. There were so many things they could have done at the Green Council that just were not used. This episode was good. Bye. Well, I'm glad you liked it. Tiandi. It's a great looking shirt. Thank you. It just doesn't fit well. That's the problem. It doesn't fit well. Okay, well, I might have missed some comments, but the whole thing just skipped down. So sorry if I missed your comment. If I didn't say anything about your comment, you know, just type it again. I didn't like that the dragon broke the dragon pit. She could have ended the war and killed the Greens. I guess she was showing mercy, but she didn't show that the Greens will show none. So this is what I don't understand, Ethan, is yes, she is showing mercy, kind of, but she didn't show mercy for any of the civilians. She just killed multiple fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, whatever, grandmas, and she doesn't feel anything for them. She doesn't think about them. They had nothing going on against Rhaenys, and Rhaenys, I don't know, it just isn't, it's not good. Yeah, agreed, Dylan, agreed. That is what happens. So we've tackled a lot of the episode already, but let's talk about the actual episode, going through every scene. So I will say the opening scene of this episode was very good, showing the dreary shot of King's Landing. It's a very dark and just the mood is set perfectly in this episode to begin with. But yeah. Also, Matthew is correct. Targaryens really didn't give a shit about the common people, but you know. And then we have kind of this little kid is walking through the castle and informs Allison basically one way or another that Viserys is dead. This is going to be a spy, presumably from Azaria as well, and this kind of leads to what we see later on. But yeah, and I thought this was a good open to the episode. Again, I want to give some positive when there are, and this is a very good way of introducing the episode and establishing the tone. And then we get an idea here that Allison is actually very upset for Viserys, which was very good. I've talked about that in this episode already, but it was really good. My husband has been watching House of the Dragon with me. He likes it. Now he wants to watch Game of Thrones. Hey, Evie, tell him to stop after season 4. Maybe season 5. But yeah, he should definitely watch it. It is very good early on. All right. So, we then have Allison and Otto's conversation, and I don't want to talk too much on this. Because I've talked about Allison a lot in this video, so either you're going to agree with me, you're going to disagree with me, or you're going to be somewhere in the middle. This whole conversation is kind of talking about what Allison wants to do. I don't know. But yeah, so that kind of goes on. And that kind of leads us to the Green Council. Right, so a lot of this I am going to kind of skip through just because we talked about it so much already. But I don't know. Watch up until season 6, but skip 5. I disagree, Matthew. I disagree. Because if you skip 5, you miss Hardhome. You miss, you know, some other things. Evie, I don't know if your husband's listening, so I don't want to give spoilers out, but something else happens in the end. Somebody, you know, gets stabbed. It doesn't have any lasting consequences, but, you know, somebody gets stabbed at the end. So I think as a new viewer that's never seen it, I think watching season 5 is good. I think the ending of season 5 is pretty solid. Aside from Stannis' stuff, that's bad. So as I've already talked about the Green Council, I'm not going to really get too much into it because I've already talked about all the things that they didn't do with this scene and all the things they could have used. And I don't know. I think there was some good things in here where there's good foreshadowing to Storm's End. Allison's acting is fantastic, or the Allison's actors are fantastic in this episode. So I thought I liked that. And I kind of wrote down here, I felt just so conflicted on the depiction of Allison, which is to me kind of how this whole episode felt for me, and it just got worse, right? And my overall kind of thoughts on the Green Council was it just left me really disappointed. For my own version of how I believe it happened in Fire and Blood and how it is described as happening, this scene really didn't do it justice, and it was not as good, in my opinion. I wish we got some reference about Laenor since the time skip. Yeah, I think Laenor will be involved in the story at some point, but I don't think for a little while. I think maybe end of season 2 we get some. Makes sense, shot. The problem with Laenor still being alive is he seemed like he loved battle. I could see him coming back on Sea Smoke after the dance starts. That's fair. I was kind of disappointed, and maybe actually this doesn't make sense for it to be in episode 9 because it's the green side of things. I would love to see the Black Council talk about Sea Smoke. Like, what's up with Sea Smoke in the next episode? I actually enjoyed season 5 more than season 6 to me. The death of Game of Thrones starts in season 6, or episode 7 with Ninja. So I disagree with you, Hugo. I think so a lot of people have tried to say what moment is when the show fell apart. I actually point to season 4. The whole Taisha like thing not being in the show really hurt Tyrion's character, and it was kind of a foreshadowing of things to come where they omitted things early on that affected later on. And I did actually like season 5 much better than season 6. If you remember, season 6 is really, there's a lot of build up, a lot of filler just for the last 2 episodes. The Hodor episode's pretty solid, but it really doesn't, it has no meaning after what happens with the rest of Bran's story. I like the addition to, I don't even know how you say their names, like Eric and then Arik. I don't know how you say their names differently. But yeah, the twins were really good. I agree with you, Citro. I'm not sure Ramiro meant, actually. I'm not sure. Beelzebub with Shay? What do you mean with Shay? Let me know what you mean on that, because I'm a little confused on that Beelzebub. All right, so let's continue on. So then they're looking for Aegon. This plot, Eric just want. Okay, that's what I figured, because I was trying to figure out how you would say it differently. But yeah, they were very good. So they're looking for Aegon, and we get the line that, you know, there's a monster, there's a beast under the boards, and again, foreshadowing to the moment that happens at the end of the episode, and wasn't great, right? It wasn't, you know, it wasn't great at the end, so I'm cool that they were trying to foreshadow what would end up happening, but I just, you know, it falls flat when you see what they actually did with the plot later on. And there's this whole idea that we don't know where Aegon is, which is fine. I just don't like that we had half an episode looking for Aegon. It just felt like filler to me almost, especially with how it's handled in the book. I just wasn't a fan. I meant with her attacking Tyrion with a knife in the show. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yep. I agree with you on that. Making Tyrion more of a hero than he was in the book was definitely something that they did not do. Otto looked cool with his hood on when he was talking to him. You know what's funny? So, Otto Hightower has his Hand of the King pin on when he goes to, like, you know, look for Aegon or whatever, go to talk to Mysaria. But he tells the Kingsguard to take their cloaks off. It's like, Otto, maybe you should take your pin off too? Might help. I don't know. So, I'm really just going to sum up the whole looking for Aegon thing, because I just thought it was whatever. You know, I just didn't care about this Otto versus Allison plot really, and I just didn't like it. So yeah, give me a second. I'm gonna get a drink. My throat's starting to hurt a little bit, but because I've had a long day of recording and doing some other stuff, and yeah, but give me a second. Okay, so basically, Aegon has been more or less captured by Mysaria, and Mysaria is kind of holding him hostage, basically. Otto, or the twins, basically find this out after they find one of Aegon's bastards and sees all the kid fighting, which is just weird, right? Oh, sorry, Glossy. Do you want more water bottle ASMR? Hold on. You're welcome, Glossy. That was for you. Also, make sure you're all hydrated. We're about an hour into the stream, so make sure you're hydrated. Get yourself some Aquafina water if you want some water. And yeah, I mean, Aquafina water is just the best water. I don't know what to tell you guys. All right, so moving on. So then we have this whole idea that Otto Hightower and Mysaria kind of make a deal, and, you know, to stop the kid fighting, which seems like a very valid request, and they kind of agree to it. And little do they know, Kristen Cole and Aemond are basically following them. There's this little action set piece, which kind of felt forced, in my opinion, that there needed to be some sort of sword fight or something going on. Yeah, use code GREASE on checkout. And also, Matthew, I saw that comment. That's very disturbing, but sure. Hugo, I don't know. This is the problem with doing weird stuff that aren't in the books. I don't know how they're going to handle Laenor at all. And it felt forced. It felt like they needed some sort of conflict. They needed some sort of sword fight, something to keep the action going. And Aegon basically gets tackled by Aemond, and they go back to Allison, and that'll get to the coronation. Or you guys know what I'm talking about. And yeah, so on the flip side, we have Rhaenys being locked into her room. Now, what I do think is weird here is why did Rhaenys stay in King's Landing? Just from a logical point of view, I'm not sure why she would still be in King's Landing, especially because she knows how dangerous King's Landing is. She literally talked about it in the previous episode with how the Hightowers basically have rulership over it, as well as like all the Blacks leave, like they've already left. So I'm not sure why Rhaenys decides to stay. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she decided to stay for a day. Not sure. We don't really get an answer on that, but it was something I was just kind of questioning. But it's not a huge problem. I don't really think Rhaenys should be here in the first place. It's something that's just not in the source material, so I'm not sure why they did it necessarily. But yeah. And then we kind of get like basically, okay, they're imprisoning a bunch of people who could have known about Viserys' death. Makes sense, right? And then yeah, so then we get Allison basically tells Aemond and Kristen to go do their thing, and I want to say I really did like their scenes together. It does a lot of good character building, especially for Aemond. They do a lot of good character building for Aemond in this episode. One of the few good character building that I liked in this episode. They did a really good job with his character, and I also like that they showed their relationship with them, with Kristen and Aemond, because that will be important, and or we will see more of that in the future. Now we also have an interesting scene where Larys Strong is talking to Otto. Also, before this, Otto has basically been trying to get the lords to swear fealty to Aegon. If they don't, they get imprisoned, basically. And this leads to one of the lords. He bends the knee and then tries to leave. Larys, having his spy network, sees this and gets him before he leaves. And Otto is kind of like sitting here like, whose side are you on? Like, what is your deal, Larys? Like, you spend a lot of time with Allison. And Larys is kind of just like, hey, what I do will benefit you as well. And I thought this was an interesting and good conversation, right? Because it makes sense that Otto would want to know what Larys is up to and whose side is he really on. Because Otto's trying to kind of measure up, is this guy someone that I can use to my benefit and or trust? Agreed shot, agreed. I like how Aegon is how he is because he feels unloved. He knows King Viserys never wanted him on the throne, and he even asked Allison point blank, and she said, "Don't be an imbecile." So this is very interesting because I will talk about this a little bit later, and I like that we see more of Aegon's background, why he becomes the psychotic, like rapist bastard he is. But at the same time, I feel like they're trying to use it as sympathy, and I just don't buy it. But it is interesting. More of that, less CGI dragons. To a degree, I agree. I don't think we needed the dragons in this episode, except for like seeing Sunfire with Aegon would have been awesome, but we just didn't. After being crowned and showered with love from the people, I feel we'll see it. Yes, so Aegon is a character that I have very mixed feelings on. Not as in like I don't think he's a bad dude, but like how they've handled his character, I think is interesting in the way that they've given him a reason to become more of an ass. But I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about Aegon when it comes to how they've handled him as a character. Also, yeah, I have no idea with Aemond and Helena if they have any kind of chemistry or relationship going on. What is Otto's motive? It's pretty much just like Tywin's where he wants to put his family in a better position and he wants to gain more power. Is basically what they've done. If you want to go off of like fire and blood motive, I have that he wants to get rid of the dragons as well, and he's involved in the Maester conspiracy, but we're not going to go into that in this video. I actually did not know that, Matthew, that Helena was that. That's actually really cool. They really got a lot of Last Kingdom actors or actresses. Yeah, agreed, Metal. That's kind of how I feel on that. Yeah, Citro, I agree. His motives are not very good. Laris, well, I think he has more going on, but I think the way that they've framed it now is just terrible. I agree, Matthew. I didn't even notice with her. Okay, so. Moving on. We have kind of Viserys being tended by the sisters, which was, nice that they, showed us that, I guess. I don't know. Again, we see feelings that Allison's kind of crying and she's going through some shit. So again, very good performance by her actress. I really liked the way that she really brought that emotion to life. And then we have the Allison and Rhaenys talk. So I like that Rhaenys sees right through Allison, like what she's doing. And this scene kind of completely... Okay, so let me know what you guys think. Was Allison just straight up manipulating Rhaenys, or was she being genuine? Because this scene has a completely different meaning if Rhaenys was basically being manipulated, like, directly. Because the problem here is that at one point, Allison says that Rhaenys would have been a better ruler, or should have been the ruler, which kind of completely unravels her own thing, right? Because if you look at it... Wait, what was I trying to say? Hold on. I had a brain fart. Hold on. Oh, okay, so Rhaenys basically is a woman, and she mirrors a lot of Rhaenyra, right? And the whole idea here is that Viserys is a male, so he should go first. He should be the king. Allison is basically having the same problem idea where Aegon should become king because he's a male. So it kind of contradicts what they're doing right now, but I don't know. I don't know if she's trying to manipulate Rhaenys or what. I don't know. I want to hope Allison was... I was hoping she was, but I don't know. Calling Laenor a cuck was hilarious. Yeah, it kind of was, but at the same time, it's like Rhaenys already knew that. Like, she knew her son was gay. Like, she knew any wedding with a woman, or any woman with him and a woman was not going to go well. Okay, so you guys think she lied. Okay, that would make sense. That makes way more sense if Allison was manipulating. But again, if that is the truth, why is she acting the way she does, like she's some good-hearted person when it comes to Rhaenyra stuff? I just don't... Again, it's a flippity-flop. Okay, well. So this leads us to Allison and Otto. Now, what I like here is that we see that Allison's like, I'm not going to let you, manipulate me and I'm not going to be your puppet anymore. And I'm like, Allison, I haven't thought of you as a puppet of Otto since, like, episode 6. Like, yes, Otto Hightower does try to have his own agenda, but you've been part of that. Like, you've been pushing that agenda. You've been an active role in that. It's not like, oh, he's telling you everything to do. So this scene felt like it should have been in, like, episode 6. I think it should have been episode 5 or 6 where this was written in. But they needed this conflict, so you have to have it here. I don't know. I kind of agree, Shot. I think it was 50-50. She was attempting to be a little minute, but also naive and probably believes a lot of what she's saying. Makes sense. Oh my god, guys, I am losing my voice. I'm gonna might have to cut off this stream a little early just because I'm like struggling to talk. So basically, she's like, Christian Cole, he's gonna be the new Kingsguard guy. He's the Lord Commander now, and also Aegon is gonna be named ruler tomorrow, and she's gonna send terms to Rhaenyra. So that is kind of what's going on, and then we get the iconic scene of Allison and Clubfoot. So basically, I'm going to break this down in today's society, I guess. Basically, Allison sent feet pics to Clubfoot so that Clubfoot would give her information and kill people for her. This being Mazaria's people. Don't think Mazaria is actually dead. I think this is just used to kind of bring her to the black side of things. And he quite literally jerks off to the said feet pics directly in front of her. And yeah, I'm at kind of a loss for words, right? Like I don't know. But let me know what you guys think about foot pics, I guess. Greasy, don't call me greasy, Dylan. What? I'm joking. What are your thoughts on Lord Caswell? I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan of the way it was handled, but you know, whatever. If Iron Squad do a report on Kristen Cole's characterization between book and show, that'd be interesting. So interesting is actually what Cliff with always and goals were during the Dance of the Dragons. Yeah, he was jerking off the feet pics. I guys, I when I saw this scene, I sat there and I was like, they're really they're going there. Okay. Yeah, this was just unnecessary. Like, why? Let's move on. Let's move on. We don't need to. We should not linger to, like, you know how they basically were like, let's not linger in Moria. Let's not linger in this realm. Okay, we need to. Okay, so Rhaenys is rescued by one of the twins, and I kind of like that. It was fine, you know, because we knew Rhaenys had to get out. Oh, you watched it with my oh, Ashley, I'm sorry. I just saw that. That's Can we all get can I get a rip in chat for Ashley in the chat? I would like a rip in the chat for Ashley. I will just use one of my emotes. There you go. That can I get it? Yeah, we need a rip in the chat. Everybody put rip in the chat. Kristen is in the friend zone. Well, he definitely ain't getting feet pics. So then we have the attempted killing of Mazaria, which I said attempted. We don't really know if she's dead. I'm assuming she's not. It doesn't make any sense for her to be dead. So I'm assuming she's not dead. Rhaenys then wants to go get Meleys, which again makes sense. All these make sense with how the plot goes, and all that. So we then have the rounding up of all the people, which is a little unfortunate now that we know what ends up happening. But yeah, so these people are basically crowded into the Dragon Pit, and they're going to see the coronation of Aegon II. And now this is where I'm going to give the episode a ton of credit. The entire crowning ceremony with him walking through or under the swords, the way the Dragon Pit looked, this was fantastic. It was the best part of the episode for me. I will say Aegon's crown not having all the rubies was a little disappointing. Wasn't the best, but I don't know. But I thought this was very good until we get the Rhaenys out. I was like literally, this is what I was typing. I typed, I like the dynamic that Aegon thought no one would clap or like him shows his insecurities that have drove him. I wrote that down, and I was literally about to type. I am actually very happy with the way this episode has ended, even though I was not a fan of the beginning. And then as I was about to type that, the Maylis thing happens, and I go, it's literally like, what, with like 18 T's, and then why is Maylis killing people and shit? Excuse me, what is this? And I'm just like, ah, it was just bad. It was bad. Okay, so I'll send a gift basket and flowers. LOL. Now the foot scene has one major question: did she know, or was she just innocently taking off her shoes and socks and did? Oh no, she knew. She knew. She knew what she was doing. She walked into the conversation, took her shoes off, and then put them right in his face. She knew exactly what she was doing. Larry's lasso is gonna be changed in the show. He'll ask to see Craigan's. Oh no. I can imagine. I know I wouldn't watch that scene with my mom. Dude, that's just terrible. I wonder how many died. Quite a lot. Let me see if I can find an image of the actual coronation, and if we look at where she comes out at, how many people die. I would love to see that. Well, let's see. Let's see if I can give you guys a head count of how many people died. Images. I'm not getting any good shots. I'm trying to get find a good image of the actual dragon pit. You know what? We're just gonna guess at least 100. We're gonna say at least 100 people died. I think that's fair. Yeah, she exposes toes, he exposes secrets. Of course. Anyone else think Aegon looks like a Targaryen Jack White? In the chat, if you think Aegon looks like Jack White. Our first view of Blackfire was, yeah, Blackfire also didn't look great. It didn't look the best. With Rhaenys, the best I can figure is it was a mix of, I want you to all remember I could have killed you right here, and if I can walk away from Colin, you can too. Yeah, but I think Rhaenys is smarter than that. They've built her up as being one of the smartest characters on the show, like Olenna, but in this moment, she's very stupid, so I don't know. Do you think he shares one secret for one toe? No. He's got to see all the toes, Matthew. These are some big boy secrets. Oh God, Sideshow, you got to stop. Agreed, Ramiro, man, but we don't need. Oh God, if somebody in the chat named Lara Strong came in as you put that in the chat, Ramiro, I would have laughed so hard. I forget, but in Fire and Blood, did Laris have an end goal aside from personal power? I wonder. We don't actually know, SpongeBob. So that is one of the more intriguing things that they could have rolled with in this story or this show, besides feet, is that for the most part, we know that he wants power. He wants to gain that, and he does, right? We just don't know really. There's a lot of kind of theories, right? And the anti-dragon conspiracy is one, but we don't know exactly, so it's very much left up in the air. Could be just like he likes to see the world burn. We don't know. But so at the very end of it, I think I would give the episode like a 7.1 or a 6.9 just for the memes. So I don't know. What is the Blackfire Rebellion? Spoiler free. So it is basically the Dance of the Dragons. So what's happening now? There's no dragons, and a lot of. I'm trying to say how it would be spoiled. There's a conflict with the Targaryens that leads to a lot of wars for who should sit the Iron Throne. That's the best I can do without giving you specifics of why it happens. I agree. I agree. I agree. Trite 609. I agree. Oh God, Ashley, we gotta stop. I like that Rainey's had armor as well. I don't know where she got it from, but I like that she had it. But that is going to be the stream. That is going to be the episode review. I would go on longer with you guys, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. Um, so yeah, but that is kind of my review. I hope this cleared this up for some of you guys that thought I was clickbaiting, because some people thought I was clickbaiting that, and I would not consider this clickbaiting at all, because that is my actual opinion. I would say this is the second or worst episode of the entire series. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoy this week's videos. We're going to be doing a stream again, probably Friday. It'll just be a Song of Ice and Fire bracket again. But, yeah. I will see you guys all next stream. Good night, guys. Have a good night. Hopefully, episode 10 is a better and more of an improvement. I would love to be a lot more positive. I don't want to be negative all the time, especially with Rings of Power, because we're not doing that anymore. But I hope episode 10 is a great one. We get back to the black side of things, and I'm really excited to see how they handle that and all that. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for participating.